Welcome to Call of the Wild.
Hey everyone, this is Monstercat's weekly radio show, connecting you with some of your favorite artists.
Hey everyone, this is Kill Paris.
Hey guys, this is Conroe.
What's up guys, Dion Timmer here.
And of course, a place where individuals like yourselves can take part in a global family.
Hey yo, this is Logan from Australia.
I'd like to shout out everyone who listens to Monstercat and remind you that you're awesome.
So glad I'm here.
So get yourself ready for an hour of fresh music, and it all starts right now.
With nothing to hold us back, these are the songs of the wild.
Hey everyone, what's going on? Today marks another one of our very special Earth Day episodes, a project we started a couple years ago and one that I've held very close to my heart. It is a time where we harness the power of music to have impactful conversations about our planet, human behavior, and of course, climate change. If you are unfamiliar with this series, we invite speakers from all around the world and across different industries to chat about sustainability and how we can mobilize positive action. Today's guests are all incredible people I've met over the years working here at Monstercat. My name is Dan, and I'll be guiding you through the hour and lead the discussion with our very talented and insightful guests. So let's get this started. Enjoy the music and the conversations. Who do we have on our show with us today?
Hey, I am Sarah Riley, and I am joining you from the East Coast of Canada. I am the Chief Strategy Officer at RNG.
I'm Micheline Dion. I'm the Director of Sustainability at RNG.
Hey, I'm Steven, and I'm the co-founder of Veritree, and I also handle all the implementations with our NGOs on the ground.
Hello, I'm Cindy. I'm the Director of Development for Veritree.
My name is Owiana. I'm a grade 10 student based in North Van, and Sustainability is a youth-led organization centered around climate action and climate justice.
Thank you for the intros, everyone. I'm very excited to have each of you on the show. We have so many great questions to cover, some this year that are quite heavy as well. So let's get into it. And starting off with some uplifting music, this is NJAC right here on Monstercat's Back to the Wild 2022 Earth Day Special. All right, now it's time to get into it. And the first question, and one of the most important ones to talk about, is what is climate change? Here is Owiana from Sustainability, Sarah Riley from RNG, and Cindy from Veritree.
Well, I would start by explaining to them that climate change is rapid and alarming changes in patterns regarding temperature and weather, and even air and water quality, which impact people's livelihood, their health, and their physical safety.
Over the past several years, we know this has become such an existential issue. So it's like such a huge, important issue for everyone to tackle. And we know that everybody's responsible. Because of that, we thought the most important thing that we could do in business was to focus on this existential issue and how could we actually turn that into a business case. So RNG helps, businesses try to figure out how they're going to tackle this issue. And that can look like measuring or figuring out what their environmental impact is, and then developing some programs or initiatives to try and offset that or to mitigate it. Start with that, and then we finish with sort of telling that story.
What we do when we work with our business partners is actually we need to understand what is their objective. And obviously, if we're able to really embed, nature-based solutions into the business objective and be able to tell a story around that and curate a portfolio that really suits their needs. For example, this company might be looking into kind of sustainable packaging. We can actually look into kelp projects that can actually create that kind of circularity to how we, visualize this as kind of like a way to really tell the story there. So I think how we work with our customers to embed this into the business model, because that's how it becomes sustainable over time.
First up, in my conversations with our guests, we had to get down to the nitty-gritty, the scientific facts. And first thing we talked about was, what is the Paris Agreement and why does it matter? Here is Cindy from Veritree to tell us.
Okay, I'll try and do this in a non-nerdy way, but basically the Paris Agreement is a legally binding international treaty on climate change. And it was really kind of, very historical in a sense that, we had 196 parties actually signing this document. At COP21 in Paris, it was amazing. And basically the goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees. And ideally to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. So that is what this agreement is. But in order for them to actually achieve this, we need to hit basically net zero by 2050. And this term net zero can be a little bit confusing because it actually doesn't equal to absolute zero. So we're not really going to be minimizing all our emissions to an absolute degree by 2050. What we're going to be doing is balancing this with removal as well. So what we need to do for the Paris Agreement is really about minimizing our emissions as much as possible. And this will take deep and also rapid decarbonization across all sectors.
Amazingly said, Cindy. Thank you. And for anyone listening that wants to learn more, please do research. We have so much knowledge at our fingertips. It just takes the initiative to search and look for those credible sources. Now, let's get into some music. This coming in behind me is a preview of brand new music from Ellipsis. Here's a teaser of Ocean Girl, heard right here first on Monstercat's Back to the Wild Earth Day special. An amazing preview of all new Ellipsis. Now, we have some more nitty-gritty questions and another equally important one. As many companies, including Monstercat, have and are undergoing environmental audits to evaluate their impact and develop a reduction target, the terms Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions become a lot more of a common language. Here is Michelin from R&G to give us a full rundown of what each of these mean. Michelin?
Yes. So basically, Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions are the 3 different scopes used to classify the emissions generated by any given individual, organization, company, or government. Scope 1 are the emissions you are directly responsible for generating and have full control over. So like from using your vehicle or from the company's manufacturing process, for instance. Scope 2 are the emissions associated with the energy you purchase. So 9 times out of 10, what we think of is the electricity somebody or a company purchases from their local grid, but there are exceptions to that as well. And then the Scope 3 emissions are the emissions that are caused by your activity, but that you're not directly responsible for.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you wanted to compare that to something that, myself and I'm sure everyone listening could relate to, what would that look like for, let's say, a music label?
Yeah, so for Monstercat, for instance, your Scope 1 emissions, because generally everything is just sort of done on computers for you, it really would be contained to your offices. So your Scope 1 emissions would be the natural gas you use for heat, for example. Your Scope 2 would be the electricity that you purchase to run those offices. And then in Monstercat's case, or for basically any record label, most of your emissions are going to come from Scope 3. And so that might include the emissions that your artists generate from producing their music. If you have any band merch, it would be the upstream emissions associated with manufacturing those t-shirts or whatever the merch might be, and then the disposal of that when it's done.
I guess another one would be music consumption.
Exactly, yeah. And then so another big one would be consumers actually listening to the music. So the electricity that they generate, and then any servers that the music might be hosted on, or the streaming platforms.
All right. Thank you, Michelin. And like I mentioned right before this, one of the actions that Monstercat has begun working on with RNG this year is determining our emissions from each of these scopes. And not only determining them, but once we have that data, develop a strategy and a target to reduce them by an amount that aligns with science-based targets to meet the Paris Agreement's limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius. This is something that has really taken its footing from these specials year after year. And with the support and your voice from the community, we can really have impactful changes for this industry. Let's get back to some music. Coming in now, here's a tune. This is called Pastimes, off of Monstercat Silk by Approaching Black. And you heard it right here on our 2022 Back to the Wild Earth Day special. Let's go. Next up on my questions, I wanted to talk to Veritree, who specialize in nature-based solutions like reforestation. You've seen us speak about Veritree throughout our socials over the years, as we've already planted 50,000 mangrove trees through them and they're verified tree planting partners. And we chose them because of their approach using technology and transparency, as well as their focus and attention towards supporting and uplifting local communities. Here is Stephen and Cindy to explain on this some more.
The easy approach is let's just put a surveillance layer on top of everything that we're doing and make sure that trees aren't getting cut down, and we police that activity. That does not do good in the long term. It does not benefit the communities. And so what you really need is that education component on the ground. These trees being left on the ground are providing additional benefits for them, whether it's bringing more underwater life back for food security and fishing and all of that, but also just the more that the education process can take place on the ground, the more community involvement takes place. And that's what we really need to have a long-term sustainable project that lives and continues to thrive.
It means really looking at nature-based solutions in a way that really only sequestering carbon. And that can actually create a lot of damages, actually, I would say, to the ecosystem. When we look at nature-based solutions, it really is about looking at this holistically and not only driven by one particular aspect that we're interested in. I think one example is, we could be planting mangroves all over the world, but at the same time, does it really serve, the ecosystem? These may be, they're not native species in certain area. They won't grow very well in certain area. It just doesn't make sense for us to look at this only from a carbon vision. And I think obviously with, nature-based solution, it does have the amazing ability to, sequester the carbon. They're actually really good at, as a carbon sink. But at the same time, they can also generate a lot of benefits. For example, for the local communities like food security and also, climate resilience, creating, the barrier for that. So I think we really do need to look at nature-based solutions, not just from a carbon angle, but in a way that is holistic and that is good for the world, and it's good for the planet, and it's good for the local communities.
Thank you, Cindy and Stephen. Now, let's get back to some music. This is Bishu with Autumn Leaves. Back to the wild. Let's go. Next up, and honestly, this one has really come to my attention after doing these episodes each year. This community sits at such an interesting and unique intersection of music and inspiration. Why do we all listen to music? Because it makes us feel good about our lives. It puts meaning to our day and the people we surround ourselves with. I think the reason why we do these specials is because it inspires us to be better people for each other's and for this planet. Here's what Oeana from Sustainabilities had to add.
Well, I think music can uplift you. So I think that as an advocate, there are times where you feel discouraged and down, and listening to music can bring you out of that. Music can also bring people together, and it can also create an atmosphere and a sense of community that was not there before. So when running events, I like to play music to encourage people to come sign up for things or to come donate. And I think it can just help create a better sense of community and make events more fun and engaging and creative. So it's helpful to make you feel better, but also to make others.
Next question I had for our guest was more of a personal one. How did they get to where they are now, and what advice can they share along the way? Here's Stephen from Veritree, Sarah Riley from RNG, and Owiana from Sustainability Teens.
To be honest, when you're young, you're trying to find a way to make sure that you can survive and that you can align your way into a space that you're going to be happy and you're going to be free to be. Your priorities aren't necessarily on climate change. And what happened for me is going to some of these projects on the ground, some of these reforestation projects. It was the sort of defining moment for me, is seeing that everything that I thought I knew was wrong. Because we can often sit here and read articles, and a lot of the times those articles are driven by fear, and we need to make sure that we don't get sucked into this vortex of fear, which paralyzes us. And by actually making things happen and getting your hands dirty on the ground, it's a huge wake-up call. So for me, seeing these projects in action and seeing that the challenges are different than the challenges that I'm being told was it was a time where I had to stop myself and say, I need to find a way to communicate the real problems on the ground and address them directly.
Not everyone should be expected to hop up and start a business. Like, not everyone should be expected to take the risk that we took to try and tackle the issue. But if you do feel angry and if you do feel dread, you should do something you can start with what's around you, what's immediately around you. And if that's taking personal action, if that's the best you can do, good, but action will help you deal with that feeling, right? So take some action, document what that action is maybe. For some folks, that's organizing at work and trying to push their own employer to do more. And take some action and then you'll feel better for sure.
I really want to urge people to not just combat climate change in the simple and the way that's usually preached to us, but use whatever talents you have to connect your field to climate change. So if you like poetry, you can try and write slam poems about it to engage students and to highlight environmental havoc. Or if you like theater, you can have a production that relates to climate change. So I think there are just so many ways that you can get involved and that you can do something. So you don't need to be limited to what people tell you to do. Think of your own solutions.
So with all this talk about the amazing action we are seeing from other companies and brands, how do we decipher if a company is telling the truth? So here is Sarah Riley to give us R&G's 3-step greenwashing identification. Take it away.
3-step identification. So step 1, first thing to ask is it consistent? Like, is this coming out of left field for this brand? Have they talked about this ever? And is it all of a sudden this big, game-changing, green thing from them, and it's never, ever come out of their mouths before? Then you might be looking at a greenwash, because consistency takes practice, right? Being sustainable takes time. You know this, Dan, we're working on projects, you have to be constantly thinking about this. How do I apply this? How do I deal with this? It's not a one and done. You don't just do it tomorrow and then walk away. It has to be consistent. Number 2, can they prove it? Is it tied to metrics, right? Do they have some metrics for you? Do they have some numbers? Good or bad, right? Are they sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly? Are they sharing all the numbers with you, or their metrics or their indicators? What are they sharing? They need to be able to back it up with something. And then number 3, and this one's really important, do they have a long-term horizon? Do they have a goal? Are they working towards something? They can talk about where they are in their own journey. And I think that long-term horizon and that goal setting is part of it. So where are you trying to go with this, right? It's not just something you're doing today. It's somewhere we all have to get to together. So you have to demonstrate that. So 3 things, right? Is it consistent? Can they prove it? And do they have a goal or a long-term horizon? And that's it. If they don't have those things, then I think suspect.
Suspect indeed. All right, let's get back to some music. Here is Smile with Found a Reason featuring Nick Smith. Back to the Wild. Let's go.
It sounded good on paper, but that's the reason why I had to leave. Surrounded by this vapor, I thought it was the air that's hard to breathe. Whoa, I guess I found a reason. Guess I found a reason. Whoa, I guess I found a reason. Guess I found a reason. Part, but how was I to know that when everything was working at the start? I still remember dancing, but you would always dance 2 steps ahead. They always mention falling. I didn't know I'd fall right through your hands. Whoa, I guess I found a reason. Guess I found a reason.
Dan here. I don't really have anything actually to say. We're halfway through the episode. Let's keep the good tunes coming. This is Grant with Jesse Mason on their track Wake Up.
Ourselves alone here, wanting to disappear, change our names, live on the sun, where every sound is clearer, burns a little deeper, and we're close enough, but your lucid touch evaporates. I open up my eyes, wake up dreaming through the days and sleepless nights. Your lucid touch evaporates. I open up my eyes, wake up dreaming through the days and sleepless nights.
during that last track, I was really thinking about what we just talked about earlier and how music can play such an important part in addressing climate change. It's because of these creative works that come from music labels just like this to reach and inspire all other industries and problem solve. I asked Stephen from Veritree what he thought of this, and this is what he had to say.
I would say the biggest thing, and this is part of what's happened for me and that's affected my trajectory, has been from creative people. It's inspiration. It's a way for artists to inspire everyone around them and to realize, to recognize that's what's happening in the background. With music, it's a perfect example for me because, I can sit here in complete silence and think that I can get to the answers and I can unlock these parts of my brain that will solve problems. But if I put on the right instrumental track and I can just let it lead me down a path, and that someone created, someone put that together, it's just realizing that you can inspire others to unlock some of these things that they didn't know they had inside them. And I think that's the biggest opportunity, to recognize the impact that they can have.
I love that. And you know what? Let's play some music. Next up, and getting back to some heavier questions, what advice do you have for younger generations and listeners? Here is Michelin from RNG to say a few words.
That is a huge question. I can say a couple things. When we were growing up, the expectation was that if you're smart, you go to university. And if you go to university, you're going to get a good job. And obviously, we all quickly realized that was not going to happen. So one thing that I would say is, you don't have to listen to these sort of traditional mindsets that university is the only way you can get a good job. And that's okay. You can do other things that you're passionate about, not between the hours of 9 and 5. I would hate to hear that young people feel like failures for not making it as hotshot business people on Wall Street, because you don't have to do that to be successful. One of the most successful people I know is a bartender, because that's what he loves to do, and he's really good at it, and he's really successful at it. So what makes him less successful than anybody else?
Thank you, Michelin, and I couldn't agree more. Let's get back to some music. Here is For You by Rich Edwards featuring Park Avenue, Back to the Wild, Earth Day Special.
For you.
become smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors, smoke and mirrors. I used to be in love with heartbreak, get internal fires. Now those burning fires fuel my desire for you, for you, for you. Fuel my desire for you, for you, for you, for you, for you. Fuel my desire for you, 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 for you.
All right, so for this next topic, it was something I've wanted to talk about for a while now, and Sarah Riley from RNG and Oiana from Sustainabilities had a lot to say on it. How do we approach the topic of justice and equity when we talk about climate change?
How is climate change connected to things like colonization or imperialism or, sort of the darker aspects of our societal issues like racism? Extraction points typically have happened in poorer nations who have been exploited, right? Either through, human rights abuses or environmental abuses. And those nations typically still remain, marginalized because of this exploitation. So they're the ones who have borne the brunt of our growth, right? Western society's growth, our ability to have unbridled capitalism and, endless growth on of Wall Street is because we have been able to extract from these poor nations who remain sort of in disarray, right? And we're still seeing the effects of that today. The flip side of the social justice question is a question of what damage have we done that is also being caused, right? Or is also causing or driving climate change? And how can we remedy those things? Because fixing those things will play a role, right? In how we reverse climate change as well.
I would actually ask listeners, how can we make these people's voices heard? I think it's all about building connections, creating networks, and creating spaces, because it is hard to have people who are underrepresented heard because they don't have the wealth to buffer themselves from the impacts of climate change that we do, and they don't have as much bandwidth to even speak about it.
And this topic goes beyond this episode, and one that really, I'm sure, resonates strongly with this community. Leading with our heart, sharing love for all people, and lifting up others. The world got a clear message of togetherness over the last few years, and it should and will not stop here. Lead with love. Here is Glow by Richard Caddick. Back to the Wild. I got nothing to say but music. So enjoy, and we have a few records left before we wrap up today's very memorable hour together. Here is Arlo and Caravan with Leave Us Behind.
We've been walking on broken glass, living in the past, our old scars left unattended. The resentment we built up, like a shadow that stays with us, is the reason you walk away. Ain't nobody said it was easy. If we can retrace our steps, we'll find where we are. Somewhere along the way, we turn the page, apart as we may be. And nobody said we're too far. I won't leave us behind. I won't leave us behind. How long have we been stuck, drowning in the dust of the words we left unspoken? There's a reason why you're still here. When the clouds have disappeared, you'll be glad you decided to stay. Ain't nobody said it was easy. If we can retrace our steps, we'll find where we are. Somewhere along the way, we turn the page, apart as we may be. And nobody said we're too far. I won't leave us behind.
All right, this is our second to last song of today, and what a special time it has been. Something else I really wanted to do over the last few years is book recommendations. Knowledge is power, and sharing that knowledge is even more powerful. So here is a few of our guests from today to give us some book recommendations. Let's hear it.
I quite like the Net Positive book by Paul Pullman, and that because it's all about shifting, the kind of the way businesses are today, which is very kind of extractive in a sense.
Okay, so I will recommend a sustainability related read. Anand Giridharadas. He wrote Winners Take All, which is a really amazing book.
So I know this book called Damnations by Samantha Nutt, and it combines anecdotes and facts to present an unexpected insider perspective on NGOs.
So there's this book. His name's Per Espen Stoknes, and the book is What We Think About When We Try Not to Think About Global Warming. It's really interesting because it allows us to understand the other side. What's going on in our heads when we get fatigued by the news and the fear and the overwhelming size of the problem.
Thanks, everyone. And you know what? I have one too. The book is called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And as for me, it's been absolutely mind-changing. It allows you to think about how companies, organizations, and brands frame their mission statements so that they start with why. Why do they do what they do? Take a look to that and all the literature that was just mentioned here today. Now, let's start to wrap this up. This is Glacier with Birch View. Thank you, everyone. Sadly, this marks the end of our 2022 Back to the Wild special. To summarize what you heard today, this has been an hour of our globally syndicated radio show called Wild, dedicated to talking with industry leaders across the board about sustainability and how to effectively think and communicate climate change. Hopefully you got something from this. I absolutely love doing these, and this year, more than any other year, it has really solidified a view that we all have come to realize that music is so powerful. It has a powerful voice in climate solutions. The community, the creativity, and the inspiration that comes from it allows us to lead with love and create long and sustainable change. And all that starts now. So share today's episode with a friend, family, coworker, boss, whoever you feel needs to listen. Let's leave off with some final advice from our speakers as we get into our last record from Mazar and Cloud None, Promises. Take it away.
That you can make a difference, and your decisions can help you steer things, and you'll be surprised what you can really do if you really put your mind to it. And I think when I was struggling as a teenager, and I think I wish someone could tell me that, that was only a period of time, and you're going to grow out of it, and things are going to be a lot brighter, and you're going to be able to make those life decisions and steer your own path. And I think I would love, my younger self to know that.
I'm seeing climate change talked about so much more. Is all of this possible? What can we do about it? All of that, when people think critically about climate change and about climate change solutions, they are so much more likely to do things about it. And that makes me feel so much more hopeful, because we're thinking about it now, and we're going to be thinking about it as we grow up.
If I could hope that I could take that advice, would just be always lead all of your decisions, all your interactions with love and not through fear.
Lost in the cracks between the pavement, but your promises unchanged. And I could try to hide in the shelter of my placement, but you remind me the promises, the rain.
That is it, everyone. Thank you for listening and being a part of the conversation. Here is a few final words from our speakers.
If you can just look at every situation with love, it's the only way that I think we can bridge this divide that's growing bigger and bigger. We have to resonate with the other side of the other opinions, take both opinions, understand both sides, and just go at it with your heart. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, you know what to do. Bye for now.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
It was fun.
Talk very soon.
Yeah, it was fun.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Monstercat's 2022 Back to the Wild Earth Day special.
And until next year, later Earth Days.